So I'm going to finish the last group of examples from section 5.1.1, which kind of leads into section 5.1.2. So they all kind of just go hand in hand. But so here it is. We have x to the negative third, y cubed, all of that to the second power, divided by x to the fifth, y to the sixth. Follow order of operations, meaning, this is a big fraction bar, so it groups it. So I'm going to deal with the numerator right here first, and then I'll deal with the denominator. So in the group, the whole group is being raised to the second power. It's all multiplication. So I'm just going to use the property when I raise an exponent to an exponent. I'm going to multiply those exponents. So in the numerator, I'm going to be left with x to the negative sixth. Negative 3 times 2 is negative 6. And then times y to the 6, or 3 times 2 is 6. So we end up with x to the negative 6, y to the 6 over, and then x to the fifth, y to the 6th, right? And there's different ways that you will strategize on how to approach this. At this point, though, I'm going to use the quotient of powers property here. So I have x to the negative 6 divided by x to the fifth. That's a division. So for me, that's going to become x to the negative 6th, right, minus 5. So that's the property. And when you use this property, whatever the result is a value that exists in the numerator of your fraction. And then we'll deal with the y. So then it's y to the 6th divided by y to the 6th, which should just be 1 in your mind. But if you don't see it that way, it's going to be y to the 6th minus 6, which is 0, right? All right, now on the left in blue, I'm just going to add those fractions or do the subtraction. So I end up with x to the negative 11th here. And then y to the 6 minus 6 is y to the 0. Y to the 0 is 1. It's a property. And then so that can just turn into 1. And x to the negative 11th, well, you cannot have a negative exponent. So a negative exponent is a repeated division. So this is really 1 divided by x to the 11th power. And then y to the 0 is really 1. So times 1, where it's just 1 over x to the 11th, and we're done. And we'll express that as your answer, 1 over x to the 11th. Exponents are positive, and we're in good shape here. Next one, a little bit bigger. There's a few ways to do this, and you will eventually come up with your own strategies to simplify. As long as you're not breaking exponent rules and algebraic rules, you're going to be in good shape. So one way to strategize is to just order of operations all the way through. So work on the left fraction completely until it's simplified, work on the right fraction completely until it's simplified, then multiply the fractions together. Others might multiply the numerator of both of these fractions together, meaning, they'll multiply this to this, and then they'll multiply this denominator to this denominator and simplify from there. As long as you're not breaking the rules, you're going to be in good shape, because all of this is really just multiplication and division. There's no additions or subtractions. It's when additions and subtractions come into play is when things, when some of our strategies working outside of the order of operations start to break down. So I'm going to stick on the left fraction and stick on the right fraction independently. So remember, there's a 1 right here, that coefficient, 1xy cubed. So you're going to do that division. 6 divided by 1 is 6, right? And then I'm just going to go through x to the second divided by x to the first here. That becomes x to the 2 minus 1, or just x to the first. Remember, when you use the property there of the quotients, when you do that subtraction of the exponents, the result remains in the numerator of your fraction now. And then for the y's, it's y to the second divided by y cubed. So the exponents would be 2 minus 3. So that's going to be a negative 1, right? So this is not completely simplified yet because I have a negative exponent. You can choose to leave it as is because we still have to multiply this whole thing to the other fraction. Or you can rewrite it as 6x over y to the first. It's really your choice. I'm going to leave it as is for the moment. And then on the right side, well, first I have to deal with this exponent here. So I'm going to raise everything in that green group to the second power. So that's 4 squared, which is 16. And then x squared squared, so the multiplication of those exponents makes it x to the fourth. Remember, we're raising x squared to the second power. The property is multiply the exponents, and then it becomes y to the first to the second power, which is y squared. Which still leaves us with a fraction, right, over xy squared. Things I'm noticing in this fraction right away is that I have a y squared and a y squared. So if you want, you can simplify right away at this point. It's really your choice. It doesn't matter. I'm going to write this as over 1 at the moment. And notice my left fraction isn't officially simplified, but I still have to multiply, right? So at this point, I am going to simplify the right fraction one more step, and I'm just going to leave this as 6x to the first y to the negative first. And my right fraction is going to be 16. The x to the fourth in green divided by x to the first right here is going to leave me with x cubed. And then the y squared divided by y squared is going to leave me with a 1. So really this whole right fraction simplifies to 16x cubed. Remember, this is all multiplication, right? So I'm still multiplying these two together. And at this point, you're going to do 6 times 16, right? So that's going to leave us with 96. X to the first times x cubed. So I'm going to add those exponents. I end up with x to the fourth. And then y to the negative first, right, is multiplying it by 1, really. And then in the last step here, I have to deal with that negative exponent. So that's really 1 divided by y to the first power. So here's how it plays out. You don't have to write this step down, but this multiplication is really 1 divided by y to the first. Most people will just express it as 96 x to the fourth over y to the first, skipping that last line I wrote. And that's it. Next line. This one right here. X to the fifth times x to the negative second. Whoops, excuse me. Let's bring this down. Divided by x to the negative third. Again, I'm just going to really work with order of operations. So I'm just going to work in the numerator. It's all multiplication right now. So I'm going to add those exponents. I end up with x. 5 plus negative 2 is 3. And then in my denominator, I have x to the negative third. Again, you can treat this however you like. And if some of you want to deal with that negative exponent first, I'm just going to use the property. So it's going to be x to the third divided by x to the negative third, which is really x to the 3 minus a negative 3 here. Right? So that's going to leave me with x to the 6th power. We're going to add there, and then we'll be done. And this is what we just did. And then I'll talk about these in a second.